It is time to get drunk. If you are not to be the martyred slaves of time, be perpetually drunk, with wine, with poetry, or with virtue, as you please. Well, I certainly please. Santé, Monsieur Baudelaire. You rock. Whew. I think I can do this. Hello everyone, Adrienne here. So today is yet another edition of Baudelaire on Booze, but I'm going to shake it up and be a little different this time. What I'm going to be doing is highlighting Charles Baudelaire's selected writings on art and literature. So basically his criticisms on art and literature at the time during his life. As you know, Charles became notorious for writing his famous work, The Flowers of Evil. He was even put on trial for obscenity for writing it because some of the poems contained within were considered pornographic and just completely outrageous for its time. However, Charles was known for something else, and that was for his art and literary criticisms. They made him a good buck. It's pretty fascinating. So if you are at all interested in art and literature of the 19th century, I think that this is a really good book to get your paws on so that you can get a perspective on it from someone who lived during that time. Woo! That absinthe hit me hard, but I feel fantastic, I promise. I feel perfectly fine. So when it comes to art and literature of the 19th century, I can understand that a lot of people of the 21st century may have a little difficulty with identifying with it. Of course, that isn't necessarily the case with a lot of goths that I know in particular. One thing that I am trying to get across to the goth subculture as it exists today is to get across to them that we aren't really so different from the artists and the bohemians and the free-thinking intellectuals and the rebellious individuals that first created Gothic literature in the late 18th and 19th century. We really aren't that different from them. As a matter of fact, we are the intellectual and aesthetic descendants of them. And this book in particular, I think, really highlights that. So yes, Charles Baudelaire does go through this book and describe many pieces of popular artwork that were available in Paris at the time during his life. And he goes into exquisite detail as to the description of the art in question, what he liked about it, what he didn't like about it, and he will even pick out very extremely minute details in the pieces of art in question, and I really, really love that. So anyone who is wanting to learn about artwork during the 19th century or wants to have a greater appreciation for it, I think should really get their paws on this. And if you do happen to get your paws on it, I highly encourage you to look up these pieces of art on Google. They're easily accessible to you now on Google. You can look these up and examine them for yourselves, and absolutely, I very much encourage you to pick out the little details that Charles describes here, because it makes all the difference and gives you a whole different perspective on something that you may just take a shallow glance over. I mean, in looking, like taking a first glance at these pieces of art when I was first reading this book, I was just like, okay, I see what you got here, okay, anything else? And then I look at some of the subtle details in here that Charles describes, and I'm just like, whoa, that's cool! I dig that! Another thing I enjoyed about this book in particular was hearing Charles's deepest and uttermost thoughts about the popular writers of his time. And most notably, of course, he does mention Edgar Allan Poe and praise him very highly. As a matter of fact, I will find you a passage, because I really think it's important to get a perspective on Edgar Allan Poe from someone who actually lived in this time. Because nowadays it's all kerfluffled. We also don't have a very good perspective on who Poe was, other than from his rival, Rufus Griswold, who wrote that scathing biography/obituary about him following his death. Now, let me just find that passage about Edgar Allan Poe that I really wanted to share with you. All the documents I have read had led me to the conclusion that the United States was nothing but a vast prison house for Poe, within which he moved in a state of feverish agitation, like someone born to breathe sweeter air, and that his inner spiritual life as a poet, or even as a drunkard, was a constant struggle to escape from the influence of his hostile atmosphere. Whoa. It's really fascinating to get a load of Charles Baudelaire's analysis as well as commentary on Edgar Allan Poe's life and how it influenced his works. Really fascinating. I repeat that, as far as I'm concerned, I am persuaded that Edgar Allan Poe and his mother country were not on a level. And in discussing Edgar Allan Poe and his aesthetics and his intellectual skill, as well as his creativity, we can certainly come to a consensus on that very same thought. Another passage in here that I found really fascinating. Griswold is ignorant of the fact that poets, more than any other type of men, enjoy that wonderful privilege attributed to Parisian and Spanish women of having the secret of dressing well with the poorest trifles, and that Poe, lover of beauty in all things, would have found the art of transforming a cottage into a palace of new design. Whoa. Like I said, you really get more of a perspective and more even of an appreciation for Edgar Allan Poe from hearing Charles's thoughts about him, and I really, really love that. In Poe's tales, love has no place. At least, Ligeia and Eleonora are not in the strict sense love stories, the main idea on which the work hinges being quite different in each case. And that's true. To an extent, that is true. And in reading what he continues on in here, he just describes that Poe writes about women in an utterly sexually devoid fashion, and I think that's fascinating. I really do. He really gets into it. As you know, Charles really wasn't that way when he came to writing his poetry. He was really sometimes filthy, but in a good way. In a really good way, I promise. It was in a good way. And yeah, some of Charles's poems were still sexy, but they were tender in comparison to some of the other poems that he wrote for his mistress Jeanne Duval, which bordered on filthy. Ooh, boy. So guys, I really hope that you will check out this book for yourself, if not just to read about Charles Baudelaire's perspective on Edgar Allan Poe, but also to get a load of the culture as well as the aesthetic and the artistic movement of the 19th century, especially with what the Belle Epoque period had to offer. And I think you guys will get a whole new appreciation on Gothic literature as a whole and realize that these writers and bohemians and rebels even are not so different from you and me. They really aren't. We're the reason why they endure. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, I will be leaving a link for this exact edition of Charles Baudelaire's art and literary criticisms down in the description below. Subscribe to my channel for more videos about Gothic literature, and I will see you guys later. Bye! One last thing before I forget, I did promise that I was going to unveil the title of the Anne Rice novel that I found yesterday, and alas, here it is. It is called Violin by Anne Rice. I am super excited to read this. I found this in Goodwill yesterday. When I found this in Goodwill yesterday, I was pleasantly surprised. For one thing, it's hardcover. Hell yeah. Another thing too, the cover is absolutely beautiful. Look at that. It's just gorgeous. I love classical artwork like that. And also, it is a very musician-driven story, so it's something that I feel like I can identify a lot with. And I do have several other books to get through, I am so sorry. But I can promise you that I will be reviewing this as well. Now, one of my goals when it comes to bringing you guys reviews of Gothic literature, I want to bring you guys something new to the table that you may not have seen before. For example, we know that Anne Rice was absolutely famous for writing her Vampire Chronicles series. Absolutely. There are several other works that she's famous for. However, this particular novel I had not heard of. And when I read the book jacket, I thought, oh my god, this is cool! I want to read it! I want to read it, man! A lot of the other works of Gothic literature that may not involve vampires are often overlooked because there is still this misconception among a lot of people that Gothic literature has to have vampires in it in order to be Gothic. That's absolutely not true. I'm trying to break that misconception. I want to bring something new to the table. Well, not necessarily new, because Gothic literature's been around for like 300 years. But you understand what I mean. I'm trying to bring something novel to the table. Pardon the pun. That you guys may not have ordinarily come across, which is why I'm focusing on other works like, you know, the works of Anne Radcliffe and The Monk and stuff like that. Anyway, so I wanted to bring you guys something new to the table, like Violin by Anne Rice, to see if it piques your interest and to expand your horizons a little bit. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys later. Bye!